I have permission from a YouTuber to watch their video, which I don't even know what it's about, and I honestly probably don't even care about what the subject is, but I can watch it while barely talking and then monetize it. Let's watch the video from Yugoslavia by Yugoslavian Yugopnik, who's from Yugoslavia. Free will, how Marxism answers the "do we have free will" question. I literally have never thought about this before, nor do I want to. But I'm going to assume before even watching that you can be both a product of your environment and have free will, because social, environmental, or whatever factors having an influence on you does not mean that you don't have free will overall.
This channel is sponsor-free and fully independent. Consider supporting my work by donating over on Patreon.
No.
Thank you. Hi there, Tavarish. Hope you're doing well. That's how I start almost every one of my videos, 30 plus now, on a channel that just hit over 100,000 subs. Throughout all this time, while I explored a vast array of topics together with you guys, I never even once considered that I would be arriving at a point at which I would explore why I'm even making these videos in the first place. Or, for that matter, why you, there behind the screen, are watching them. What array of puzzle pieces must have come together throughout our long or short lives to create you and me, and then connect us in this rather impersonal exchange of ideas and ideology. Were we guided here distinctly through the power of our own choosing, or is everything, in a way, already determined?
It's because we were created by Yakub many millennia ago, and now we're here.
By the thousands of factors which guide our every single day. As my rather melancholic introduction might have hinted, today we'll be modestly touching on one of the arguably most unarguable topics in existence, that of free will. The question of the extent to which men are masters of their existence, the extent to which they can make real choices as individuals or social communities, is nearly as old as man himself. It is certainly as old as the study of philosophy. It dates back to the earliest times when man began to think about their world, life, themselves, began to try to understand why things happened the way they did, and whether they could happen differently, and how they could be made to happen differently. On all these questions, be it the question of individual liberty or the role of subjective factors in the evolution of societies, philosophers have always wavered between two radically different poles: pure determinism on the one hand and absolute free will on the other. It is my intention to introduce a variable to these theses through Marxism and friends.
And France? Did he say Marxism and France? And France? No, and friends, and friends, and friends. Okay. Okay, we almost had a certified French moment there, but thank fucking God I misheard him. Thank God we almost had a French moment. I would have had to immediately stop watching the video if it was France.
Let me not get ahead of myself. So, what even is free will? Simplified to the point of stupidification, we can define it as the capacity of people to choose between different possible courses of action unimpeded. Unimpeded implies two main concepts: that you can at all times do whatever you want to, and that your will to do whatever you want to comes from you and not as a consequence of outside factors. Therefore, really, at the crux of it, it's really a question of motivation, what it stems from, and our ability to change it. The cliché answer to this dilemma usually goes two ways. I can do whatever I want, like taking an egg and cracking it over my head right now, so therefore I have free will and the ability to mold reality to my choosing. Or, in contrast, every interaction I've had with my environment throughout my whole life has molded me in a way that has led me to this point where I'm able to question that very same mold which defines me. So,
why can't it be like both? I mean, that's basically what I said at the beginning, right? Like, obviously, uncontroversially, you are limited by outside factors, but you still have certain choices that you can make within that spectrum. And theoretically, we could remove those outside limitations as much as possible through Marxism, motherfuckers, thus giving us all real free will. And that's probably what he's saying. I always thought like the philosophical discussion on free will was not like this. I thought it was more like, do we have free will, as in like a sort of brain programming sort of perspective, rather than like being limited by our environments. But I also have literally never read anything on it, and I don't plan to, and I don't care. So
Yes, even if I crack an egg over my head or discuss the idea of free will, it's a consequence of the millions of previous experiences I've had. Even freedom is a part of the code. So let's explore both of these for a second before we make it a bit more complicated. Having this discussion in the first place and choosing a side in it stems from our wants. Take a choice as simple as
why is Peter Coffin meditating?
picking between tomatoes and cucumbers. What would you rather eat if given a choice? Picking one over the other is defined by your wants. You might simply prefer tomatoes because, well, you do. So, what, I don't have free will? Well, wait a moment. Even if I do prefer the tomato, I can still choose the cucumber instead, proving that I have actual control over my actions, and that would be true, but not really. I know, it's annoying. Your want for tomatoes would be outweighed by your want to prove there is an existence of free will. You would still operate with the same dilemma, just now you'd be choosing between a tomato and proving free will instead of a tomato and a cucumber. And where does said want even come from? Your billions of individual choices sprawling out like a tree of unlimited branches built you up to a point at which you're more interested in conversing over the human experience than eating a tomato. And while I should say congratulations, I really
Tomato, tomato. It is not tomato, it is tomato. You need to speak better.
shouldn't, because was it really even your doing, or was everything already determined? Is there no such thing as being self-made, or success, or kindness for the sake of kindness? Because if everything is pre-coded into a realm of scientific destiny of sorts, then do we really write our own lives, or do we just play a predefined character? Some, like Chomsky, say this very question is a waste of time because it's unknowable. Others are already trying to build analytic tools
Marcus Zuckerberg. Why is he appearing? Stop looking at me, Mark.
for behavioral predictions in an effort to put a leash on humanity's destiny. In the show Westworld, minor spoiler warning, we get a quick look at what that could look like. We're introduced to the premise of total utilization of predestination. There, a major corporation has developed an AI which has the aggregative power to analyze all potential outcomes for society based on the billions of different choices every single citizen takes. It can basically chart different paths for humanity based on what global events transpire and which do not. With that information, the owners of the AI proceed to, in their own terms, chart the most optimal path forward for humanity, while brutally removing all outliers which don't play into this path. Privatizing destiny, in a way. Something not too far off of what major social media conglomerates are probably trying to achieve in the long run by processing every nook and cranny of our personalities. But the other extreme is also there. Some give in to their spiritual instinct that
Some
the
are
very
French.
spark of consciousness within us is what allows us to separate from the herdable animal by granting us complete control over the self.
When does he
An
talk
originally
about...
beautiful idea,
When is
but
he going to talk about the funny countries?
one unfortunately co-opted by the pick yourself up by your bootstraps crowd. I mean, I could go on for hours about the hundreds of dilemmas which come out of every single one of these theses, but the role of philosophy shouldn't just be to analyze the world, but to change it. So, we either have free will, which means everything's nice and dandy, the future is in our hands, life has meaning, yada yada, and I can end this video here because there's little to nothing I can really add to the discussion. Or we don't have free will and everything is predetermined, so change is impossible. Well, that's where it gets actually interesting. For the rest of this conversation, let's embrace this grounding reality that most, if not all, of our actions are determined by our current and past surroundings. If you were to interact with a 17th century European settler in the US, you two would be so different that both you and him would question each other's.
This is the classic colonialist argument. Bro, it's not my fault I did a genocide, bro. It was determined. If I didn't do a genocide, he'd do the genocide. One of us has to do the genocide. If I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
Very humanity. His world, so to speak, had molded him into the hardy, zealously religious, bigoted, once-a-year showering, teeth-missing barbarian in front of you. And vice versa. Both of you share the same genetic code, the same brain, heart, and pair of arms. Yet, because of the vastly different world you two are from, you've grown into borderline different species. His parents treated him one way, yours another. State and private institutions built and informed his ideals of success, his ideological upbringing.
I love like the juxtaposition between the genocidal barbaric Yankoid and the modern barbaric Yankoid who just like moderates Discord all day.
Defined his relation to his partner and offspring and so on. Just like, to a lesser or greater extent, the same happened with you. You see, determinism says it's all out of our control.
Oh God, Marx. I don't want to see beardless Marx anymore. What the fuck is this?
Those in support of free will completely refute that. Dialectical materialism, on the other hand, if applied to this dilemma, offers us actual solutions. In this whole conversation up to now, we were constantly inquiring about the free will of individuals, but what of whole societies? Well, according to Marx and Engels, the development of societies does not follow a predestined, predetermined course. Societies can act on and influence their own development. So does that mean they believed in free will? Well, this is where the beauty of nuance comes in. The fundamental lesson of Marxism is that societies cannot act in ways that contradict the laws currently governing the evolution of societies. Put simply, choice exists, but only to the extent which the environment allows for. And as the environment changes...
Yeah, that's basically what I said. It's just that, like, I always thought this question was less about, like, are you being limited by your environment, and more about, like, are you being limited by your cognition? Like, is there some sort of coding within human consciousness that limits your free will? That means you don't really have free will, even though it might seem like you do. That's what I thought the philosophical question was. But again, I literally do not know a thing about it.
Choice changes with it. The choice between cucumber and tomato can only exist when they're available, or when you can actually afford to buy either. And the more complex choice between the tomato and a discussion of free will only exists in a society developed enough to allow for dimwits like ourselves to know of it and discuss it in the first...
Oh my God, he called me a dimwit just because I'm Greek.
First place. The ability to choose, not freely, but more freely, is predestined by the material reality on the ground. Take a bird that lived its life in a cage and then release it out into a forest. Sure, its future will still be predetermined by the forest instead of the cage, but the new environment it finds itself in allows for far grander destinies to manifest. This is the true power of societal evolution, and if I may say so, revolution. It's that we can change said material reality and, in a way, expand the scope of free choice a little by a little.
Yes, let's do that by dismantling the state of Israel.
But, okay, what's up with this optimism? Wouldn't our wants, which inform
in Minecraft
us to
no, in real life,
free ourselves from predetermination also be predetermined? Well, sure, but the same way man has molded nature to serve their purpose, we can use our knowledge of predetermination against it, prying away as many fingers destiny has put around our neck as we can. All of history is struggle. For Marxists between classes, where the purpose of socialism is to provide today's society with a form of organization that corresponds to the material possibilities open to us today and that satisfy the cultural and moral values that current conditions in the history of mankind have taught us to consider most appropriate to the well-being of humanity. Contemporary society has the objective material capacities in the developed world, at any rate, to put an end to capitalist exploitation and all the forms of oppression that it perpetuates. This is the basic and primary reason.
Yes, this is exactly it. First worlders, you have free will. You can change everything, but you don't. Therefore, it's your fault. It's your fault. First worlders, it's your fault that we have capitalism. It's your fucking fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault.
But what does
It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. You coddled first world McDonald's Big Mac eaters for not doing a revolution and instead being complicit in the destruction of the third world so you can get your tendies, so you can consume product. Your fault.
This political question of class conflict have to do with free will? Well, everything. Economic and social conservatism fights to preserve the same predetermined factors which inform our actions and beliefs. It likes it. It likes the cage. The code, so to speak, works well for those who enjoy or think they enjoy the current state of the matrix.
Isn't this like the bald guy who Hasan just debated?
There are real, true material motivations for wanting to steer the world's destiny in one way or another, which will then, as this video is trying to claim, define the very way predestination works. The pursuit of a less hierarchical and potentially hierarchy-less world are the ideals progressive movements are innately striving towards.
Hierarchy-less? That sounds a bit anarchist of you, man. Big L.
Ideals which work directly in favor of free will. One which takes away as many tools of control in the hands of destiny.
Man, you should not punch walls. This is a bad idea.
And puts them in the hands of the human. When we rejected the idea that the world evolves around our little planet, we opened the floodgates to the discussion about our place in it. When we touched space, the cage of predetermined possibility nudged ever forward. When we took children out of factories and gave workers the weekend, we shifted the destinies of billions. The struggle for true uninterrupted freedom might never be won in its entirety, but the struggle for expanding the very definition of freedom.
I feel like at the end of this video, he's gonna show a clip of him like gearing up with a fucking rifle and going out to start the revolution. That's the vibe that we're getting now.
Can. Destiny's destiny, in a way, is to eventually eat itself.
He's giving a speech. He's giving a speech before he goes out to start the armed revolution against the bourgeois, to liberate the third world, and institute the JDPON, led
And
by
I think
Joe.
we should help it. Wowawee-woo. We hit 100K since we
Why
last
is he
talked.
Borat?
So thank you everyone for making this happen. Subscribers, listeners, and supporters alike.
Well, it was a good video, but I would have liked it if he had talked more about the funny countries, because that's what his channel is. He's Yugopnik from Yugoslavia.
This
and
channel is sponsor-free and fully
constitutes
independent.
many of the
Considers-
funny countries, the Balkans. It does kind of sucks that he didn't cover anything regarding the funny countries, but it was okay. It was a good video. I think I came to the same conclusion before watching it, but I mean, if I search YouTube for the funny countries, what comes up? Nah, nothing. I would have expected to be nothing but Balkan meme videos. But yeah, I was watching that so that I could upload it to my own channel as a reaction with permission from Yugopnik and get free money. And I did. So there we go. There's the reaction.